Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, the Pistons Pulse. Co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 Hooper, current high school coach, teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids. And Omari Sankofa II, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press. Omari, my guy, the wife and I finally carved out the 3 hours to watch the new Batman. And I can honestly say I did not plan on coming to this conclusion, but it's not even close to as good as The Dark Knight.
Oh no, Bryce, that is the incorrect take. Not even close. Not even the same stratosphere. Wow.
We rewatched The Dark Knight on Saturday just to refresh our memory. The Batman was fine. It was fine, but it did not live up to the hype that I had been getting.
The Dark Knight is like an NBA team that has like a superstar and just a bunch of below average role players. Joker is the only great character in the movie. Everybody else is average to below average.
That's all it needs.
Every single part of the Batman works. Like, you can remove individual pieces and the movie's still great because everybody holds their own. It is a better Batman story. It's got better, it's just overall better. It's just overall better. And I see Wes's reactions too. I know it. We're still united on this one.
Yeah, you guys are always united, and when we get to segments 2 and 3 during our mock draft, I'm sure we'll see it, and the fans and the listeners will hear it even more whenever Wes is given his mock draft grades between you and I. Hopefully he can be a little bit unbiased, Wes, if you can do that for us. But I don't even care. The Joker was so individually good in The Dark Knight. I don't know that it matters. And I just didn't think the Batman storyline was that good. Where was the twist? Where was the turn? What had me on the edge of my seat? Nothing.
Well, you can say that about The Dark Knight, too. What did he learn in The Dark Knight other than the fact that the Joker's crazy?
That's all that matters. That's what I'm saying, though. That's the trump card. No matter what, is the Joker stand alone is the best thing there is between those two movies. I know we could do this all day. I know we got to get to some Pistons talk, but that is my take. 5.5 hours of Batman movies this weekend, and that is my take, is The Dark Knight is better than the Batman.
Well, I'm just going to apologize to our listeners. Sorry we opened up this episode with such a bad take. If you haven't seen both movies, go ahead and watch them, and you'll see for yourself how off Bryce is on this one. But it's okay. It's okay. It's okay to be incorrect. Follow us at Motor City Hoops if you want more Batman takes. I'm not sure if you would. At Omari Sankofa and at Freep Sports. And make sure you subscribe to Freep.com. Also, make sure you subscribe, rate, comment, and interact with us on whatever app you use to listen to us, whether that's Spotify, Apple, or Google. We love the interaction and we love the feedback.
Absolutely. We've got some new ratings. We're going to read those before we go to segment 2. But here to start off segment 1, Omari, all joking aside, Rookie of the Year results came in, and Pistons fans are not happy. Our guy, Cade Cunningham, came in third. I know you wrote an article about it. I read it. It's a great article. As always, make sure you always read Omari Sankofa at Freep.com. What do you think about the results? Did it surprise you at all?
So for those who didn't read the story, my takeaway was basically, I think you can make a strong argument that Cade should have won Rookie of the Year. I didn't have a vote, but I would have voted for Cade simply because I think he had a great season. There's no question about that. And also, I think his job was just a lot harder than the jobs that Scotty Barnes and Evan Mobley had this season, which means maybe I grade Cade on a little bit more of a curve, just that he wasn't playing with a Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet or a Jared Allen and Darius Garland, proven all-star guys. With that said, it is what it is. This was a historically great race. It's going to be a historically great class. You had guys like Franz Wagner and Jalen Green, who also had seasons that in other years probably would have been worthy of the award, and they didn't even come close this year. Herb Jones got a third place vote and Franz Wagner didn't, and I think Franz had an overall much better season than he did, and even probably belonged in that conversation as well to make it a 4-man race. So in the grand scheme, it is what it is. We know Cade is going to be a great player. We know he's the franchise star, that centerpiece that the Pistons have been looking for so long. And I get the frustration, but Scotty had a great season. Evan had a great season. It is what it is for me. I get the frustration and everything, but by the time next season starts, nobody's going to care.
Yeah, no, and I tweeted out the same thing. I understand the frustration. I know why Pistons fans wanted Cade to win, but at the end of the day, he is who we need him to be, who the Pistons organization needs him to be, and that's all that really matters. I've said this before. I think what's really interesting, Omari, is what is the first team all-rookie team going to look like? Because you have those three. Those three are all going to make it, right? Scotty, Evan, and Cade. Is it going to be Jalen Green, Franz Wagner, or Herbert Jones? One of those guys is going to be left off, and there's going to be a pissed off fan base that their rookie isn't even first team all rookie.
And that's the thing. And that's why I sort of disagree. Not to get off topic, that's why I disagree with this is like an anti-Detroit bias thing, which I'll touch on later. But you're right. Like, guys are going to get snubbed. Like, I think obviously Cade, Evan, and Scotty are shoo-ins for first team. But you have a guy in Josh Giddey who almost swept all of the Western Conference Rookie of the Month awards until he got hurt toward the end. So I know he played fewer games than those guys. He was like around 55 or 56, somewhere in that range. He may not make first team. He really didn't even appear on the voting for Rookie of the Year. And 2 months ago, I think he probably would have been in the mix even over a Scotty Barnes if you just look at what Giddey was doing with the triple doubles and just how young he is as well. Guys are going to get snubbed. Guys are going to get snubbed. It's going to be tough. Franz, Jalen Green, Giddey, like all those guys are super deserving. So we're also talking about guys for teams that aren't like darlings. I mean, Franz plays for Orlando, Giddey plays for OKC, Evan plays for Cleveland, and Scotty plays for Toronto. So, like, again, like I kind of put it on Twitter, but you have people saying, well, they just hate Detroit. No, I think if Cade played for Indiana or I don't know, Minneapolis, small market teams, it still would have been the same result. Like, I don't think there's any Detroit bias at all. I think it's just, people decided that Scotty had a good season for a good team, and that was it. But what about you? I mean, how would you vote for first team all rookie? It's really tough.
Yeah, I don't know who. I mean, I think Franz probably makes it, and Herb Jones, I guess. I don't know. Jalen Green had really good post All-Star break. Like, I know that's his argument. But here's the other thing. Omar, we haven't talked about Ayo Dosunmu with the Bulls. Bones Highland had a great end of the season with the Nuggets. Kuminga had a good end of the season. Like, I'm sure Davion Mitchell with the King. Like, this rookie class had a really, really good rookie season. And so I don't know, like, outside of those top three. And here's why I don't know. So I want to talk to you about this. And I'm not trying to come at anybody with this. But let me ask you this, Omari. How many games of Scotty Barnes and Evan Mobley did you personally watch this year outside of the games they played against the Pistons?
Not a whole lot. Just from having to watch so much Pistons, it's tough to catch other teams here and there. I did watch a few Toronto games, so I caught Scotty here and there. I did watch a few Cleveland games, so I caught Evan here and there. But outside of when they played the Pistons, probably once or twice, honestly. It's just tough to follow multiple teams when you're watching 82 of one.
No, absolutely. And I guess that's my point is I sit here and say I think Cade Cunningham was the best player in the Rookie of the Year, but how many games did I actually watch of Scotty Barnes and Evan Mobley? So, and I know it's the job of the national media member to cover all 30 teams, but they can't watch every single game. So I have a hard time holding, I know some people didn't like what David Aldridge said on our episode, but who am I to hold somebody to the fire like that when, yeah, I watched every second of Cade Cunningham. I didn't watch every second of those other guys. You just asked me who would I put on first team. I don't know. How many minutes of Jalen Green? I barely watched Herb Jones at all. I just checked box scores. And again, it's not my full-time job to cover the entire NBA, but I think sometimes as fans, if we're honest with ourselves, we haven't watched these guys enough to know either. So then we just go to the metrics, which I don't necessarily believe in those as well.
Right. And I would assume that people who left Cade off of their ballots, there were three. That's not dox. That's not, call people out on Twitter. Everyone, let's behave. It's sports. But I think, the thing about Cade is people just said, well, he wasn't that efficient. His TS for the season was like 52 or whatever, which is probably not what you want from a lead option. But they're not looking at the entire picture. They're not seeing that he had a rough start because of the ankle. After November 30th, his numbers were much better. And then as the season went on, he got better. To me, the only rational argument for voting for Herb Jones over Cade Cunningham, which I actually didn't know this, but I'm told one national guy did. I respect that national guy, so again, we're leaving names off of the pod. But I would assume it's just the Pelicans were in the playoff race. They made a big trade at the deadline for CJ McCollum, so you're watching them because they kind of went from the NBA's worst team through the first half of the season to one of the better Western Conference teams in the second half. So you're watching Herb Jones every night. You're seeing that he's already a stellar defender and good 3-point shooter. He's playing a key role for them. So I think that's kind of what dipped Cade. It's just lack of eyes for sure. Some guys are getting watched more. And I think that also hurt Josh Giddey. I mean, I think that hurt Jalen Green to an extent. Jalen Green was phenomenal over the last couple of months. I think it's not just a Cade thing. It's just you can look up and down, and I think a lot of teams could make that argument. Which goes back to why I say I don't think it's a Detroit thing. I think this is just a rare rookie class. We had a lot of guys playing key roles for really good, surprising playoff teams. Like all those teams overachieved, the rookies overachieved. Scotty Barnes was not projected as a top 5 pick back in January of last year, and then he kind of rises, jumps, Jalen selects for number 4, and he exceeds expectations. Evan Mobley exceeded expectations. That's what makes this class so unique to me. Did Cade exceed expectations, or did he meet expectations as the number 1 pick? If you're a national guy, you're looking just relative to expectations. I think some guys probably stood out more because of that.
Yeah, and speaking of expectations, the Batman did not meet the ones you and West had set forth for it, and so that's no. But honestly, I think part of what has frustrated fans is they feel like the goalpost was moved, right? Like everybody's, well, winning shouldn't matter. When has winning ever mattered in the Rookie of the Year race? And I get it, but I think that's with every award. Like to kind of stay with this point of, was it really against Cade Cunningham? I don't know that I believe that, because the goalpost is always moved. It gets moved for MVP. It gets moved for Defensive Player of the Year. There's all these other narratives and nuances that end up determining these things. Like, I feel like part of the reason Marcus Smart won Defensive Player of the Year was because it had been how many ever years since a guard had won Defensive Player of the Year. I'm not saying he's not deserving, but I can't imagine that wasn't part of the reason.
Yeah, like I think that's a factor for sure. And I will also say that I think winning is always a factor in these races, whether it's MVP, Rookie of the Year, whatever. Winning is always a factor. Now, was winning a bigger factor this year than in a regular year for the race? I think so, because it's an unusual year where you have 2 guys with Rookie of the Year resumes who played for teams that won more than 40 games. Like, they were both above 500. So I do think it was more of a factor this year, but that doesn't mean that it's not ever a factor in general. And then suddenly this year became a factor for the first time. I think when you look at, first and second team all rookie every single season, if you're a rookie and you're a good role player for a playoff team, you're probably more likely to make second team than a good role player and you're a rookie for a bad team. Like our parents, Şengün had a good year for Houston. Is he going to make an all-rookie team? Probably not, because you had guys who were good role players on teams that were better than Houston was this season. And that's not a knock on Şengün. It just means the reward has to come in somewhere. So I think we're aligned on this, Bryce. Like, at the end of the day, I think you can make perfectly valid arguments for Cade. At the same time, it's just a unique year. Scotty had a Rookie of the Year resume, and it's not a reach, I think, that he got the award. Now, do I think the disparity should have been as big as it was to where Cade only got, I think, 9 first-place votes? No, I think he should have been a lot closer than that. But, at the same time, third place is third place. So whether it was by a big or small margin, the result's the same.
And that vote in general, I think, was the closest in the history of the award between Scotty and Evan. But yeah, like I get frustrated anytime I see somebody say Scotty was no question the Rookie of the Year. Or even honestly, Omari, if someone tries to tell me Cade was no question the Rookie of the Year, I'm like, I don't believe that. And maybe all those guys were close enough. This year it came down to whose team won more games. And again, I understand why people don't like it, but again, I just don't care, because Cade Cunningham is that dude. He's a Detroit Piston, and he showed everything that our organization needs from him.
But to your point, I had a few people in my mentions say Scotty Barnes isn't even that good, or I had somebody say, we don't even know who Scotty Barnes is in 5 years. And I'm like, there are so many rational arguments you can make in favor of Cade Cunningham. That to say that Scotty Barnes isn't even that good. Like, just let's stick to rational arguments, people. Don't say irrational things, these emotionally driven fan arguments. Like, that is just absurd. There's so many rational things you can say in favor of Cade that just to say that Scotty Barnes isn't even good. I had to beat my mentions today. I'm like, you guys just sound insane. Like we can give credit where credit is due. You don't have to just lie. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and that's what we got to find the middle ground more often than not. We don't have to always go to the extremes. But we're going to put this to rest for right now, because we got a big couple segments coming up with our live mock draft. Before we do that, though, Omar, we got a couple new ratings on Apple, and we appreciate those, and a couple comments came with them. So this first one was from Dakari, said, looking forward to the coming months of draft and free agent discussion, and we will have plenty of it, guys. Does the narrative around Brunson change this week after what he did to Utah? Great work all around. Keep it up. It's a must listen each Tuesday. So first, thank you. Second, if you guys ever want to send in questions this way, we will definitely catch them and have them on the pod. Real quick, Omari, Brunson was balling without Luka. What do you think about his free agency and what that price tag might be?
Yeah, I think his price went up, but I think Dallas would be foolish to let him go. I believe they have his bird rights, so whatever the price is, they should be able to match it. The price went up. He's a baller. It's easy to see why the Pistons are interested. And do I think the likelihood of the Pistons getting him goes down a little bit now that Brunson has proven his value? Probably, but we'll see. I'm not going to make any predictions yet.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that the deeper the playoff run, if he continues to have some more games, if they end up losing in the first round, this completely changes. But they make a run, let's say they make a run to the Western Conference Finals, and he's a huge part of that. Like you said, Dallas is going to let him go. Like, I just don't think so. So it may not come down to whether Detroit wants him or whether Weaver likes him or he's a great fit. It just may come down to the fact that Dallas isn't going to let him leave Texas. And one final one here from Love Asha 5 says, a fun listen. Omari and Bryce do a great job of delivering great insight on Pistons basketball. Their content is digestible even for the novice fans like myself. The Pistons Pulse is a must listen for any Pistons fan.
Yeah, we appreciate the love, appreciate the support. I check the comments every single morning. I'm sure Bryce probably does too, and he sends them in our little group chat just in case we missed them. But I would tell Bryce now, like, he has yet to reveal a text for the first time to me. I always know when they come in. So again, we pay attention. We appreciate the love and support. Keep it coming.
Absolutely. I thrive on feedback, so I love those. I'm always looking for them and continue to send them our way. All right, guys, it's now time to get into our NBA lottery mock draft. When we come back from this break, we will take one and only one spin of the Tankathon wheel, and then Omari and I will put on our GM hats for each team, alternating selections.
I'm Alyssa Robinson for the Detroit Free Press. When you wake up every morning, what's the first thing you do? Check your email? Me too. And when you sign up for our daily briefing newsletter, you'll get all the latest news sent directly to your inbox so you can wake up and be ready for the day. We also have newsletters about COVID-19 in Michigan, the latest entertainment headlines, as well as Woodward 248, a newsletter specifically for people living and working in Southeast Oakland County. And don't forget about automotive headlines and all the latest news from our Michigan sports teams. We have a newsletter for every personality and preference. Just head to freep.com/newsletters to sign up for any one of these great options and more.
All right, guys, we are back, and over that short break, Wes took a spin of the Tankathon wheel and is currently revealing to Omari and I how the teams came out, where our Pistons landed. And so how this is going to work, I'm going to give you guys the rundown of where everybody landed. Omari actually had the number one pick, and so he will select for that team, and then we will alternate every pick with Wes. You guys are going to get to hear Wes's voice for the first time on the Pistons Pulse. He's going to drop in with his instant grades and analysis. So the number one pick actually ended up with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Second overall pick went to the New Orleans Pelicans. Third to the New York Knicks. Our Pistons dropped one spot to number 4. The Rockets all the way to 5. The Magic to 6. Followed by the Pacers, Blazers, Kings, Spurs, Wizards, Oklahoma City again, Hornets, and Cavs. So, Omari, you are on the clock for the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Awesome. I would say very, very quickly that this is a good Tankathon spin because it goes back to our initial point of stop watching the standings. The Rockets, who had the best overall odds, fell all the way down to 5. And the Magic, who had the second best odds, fell all the way down to 6. So even though the Pistons fell one spot, they still ended up with a better spot than the two teams in front of them. So again, it's so unpredictable that, it is what it is. The Pistons can pick anywhere between 1 and 7. They may get screwed less than the teams ahead of them. They may get screwed more, but it is what it is. With that said, with the first overall pick, I am going to take Jabari Smith Jr.
Ooh.
For the Oklahoma City Thunder. Honestly, I think our episode with Jeremy Woo last week shifted my opinion a little bit. Like, I still think Chet is on top of my personal draft board, but I just like his point of a guy that shoots it as well as Jabari Smith Jr. at his size, and he's so young. Maybe just don't overthink it. He's an NBA player. His game's going to translate. He's going to provide immediate value. And Oklahoma City, I mean, they've got some guys on their roster. I mean, you have Shea, obviously, Josh Giddey. I like Trey Mann a lot. They've got some talent, but just put Jabari Smith Jr. in there, your backcourt set. Now you have a big man who can really, really shoot it. I think it just makes sense for them. So that's my first overall pick.
I did not think that's where you were going to go. I just thought you would keep it skinny there in Oklahoma City and give them Chet Holmgren.
You already have Poku. I think their training staff don't have two sitters that you need to add weight to. Just take the guy that can shoot. Like, Poku could be the gaining weight project. You don't need him and Chet in the same locker room, I don't think.
Okay, so this is going to get really interesting with the Pelicans moving up to number 2. And I believe this is a pick from the Lakers, if I'm not mistaken. And so this moved way up in the Tankathon. So just kind of looking at the Pelicans roster, do you take Paolo and add him in with Zion Williamson and the rest of that squad? This is interesting here at number 2. I'm still going to go, you know what?
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. Wes, we have to bring you in for the first pick.
My bad. Thank you, Omari. Thank you. Wes is looking at. I took Wes's shine. I am so sorry. Wes, instant grade for Omari. This is going to be good too. I can't wait.
Well, first of all, I was just going to let you go, and then I was going to hit him on the backside, get 1 and 2. But I actually think that's an A for Jabari Smith Jr.
No.
Yeah, no, it's going to surprise you, but I like the shooting next to SGA and Giddey. I think those two make Jabari Smith Jr.'s life a lot easier. So I think that's a good fit.
There we go. First A, first pick. I like it. Wes, this was a great idea. I like that we're bringing you in.
No, this is an awful start because this is exactly what I was talking. He doesn't even like Jabari Smith Jr. He doesn't even like him. And you took him over both of your boy in Chet Holmgren. So I'm going to try to cherry pick here and get a good grade. No, seriously. So I just don't know I don't think Paolo's the pick here. I think if the Pelicans ended up in this spot, they take Chet Holmgren. So I'm going to take, with the number 2 pick to the New Orleans Pelicans, I'm going to take Chet Holmgren. Even with their roster, Omari, you may be able to bring him on a little slower. He may be able to come off the bench. I know maybe that's not what you want to do with the number 2 pick. I've said that I don't want to see the Pistons do that with whoever they draft. But I do think that that's probably who they'd select here because if they believe in Zion at all, I don't think Paolo makes a whole lot of sense.
I like that pick for sure. I think so. Their front court, of course, is Valanciunas and Zion. And Zion, as good as he is, I think he's a weird front court player in the sense that he doesn't really space the floor. He doesn't really defend. So you need to pair him with a center who does both of those things. And Chet, the best version of Chet, will do both of those things. So that's honestly a pretty ideal fit for what you would want in a big man playing next to Zion. So I like that a lot, but let's see what Wes thinks.
I was going to say the same exact thing. If Zion can get healthy, I think that could be really fun. So that's going to be an A as well. And I love Chet.
Let's go. All right, Omari, you have the number 3 pick now with another team that flew up in this lottery, the New York Knicks. Knicks fans are going to love us. I don't know if we have any Knicks fans that listen to the Pistons Pulse, but we might after this episode.
Yeah, we might. Yeah, the Knicks, they had the 11th best odds, so they jump all the way up to 3. So that's a pretty nice payoff for what was a disappointing season for them. So this is tough because the best player available is Banchero. The unfortunate thing is that Banchero and Randle have a lot of the same strengths, a lot of the same weaknesses, and you cannot play them together at all.
No.
Like, they do not fit. So I know Randle was sort of he didn't have a great season. Looks like the fan base might have turned on him a little bit. And I don't know. Like on one hand, I'm like, maybe if you're the Knicks, you trade this pick down. But this isn't a trade down like mock draft. This is you just take somebody. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you don't take Banchero here. I think you just take Banchero and maybe you look for a package for Randle at that point. Like maybe that's the best case scenario. The Knicks, I mean, they're probably not a playoff team next year anyway. So you kind of look at this group. You have some good young guys in RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly. Maybe you just look at it and you say, okay, we have Banchero, so we see what we can get for Randle, and we just got to blow this thing up. I mean, you're only trading one guy, so it's not really blowing it up. Yeah, that is a really awkward spot for the Knicks. Like, you move up, but you end up taking a player who is a clone of, like, your current best player. That's one
of his comps, right, is Julius Randle.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm taking Banchero, and I'm just going to have a Randle decision to make at some point this summer.
I think you take Banchero and you trade Julius Randle, which leads me into, like, from a Pistons perspective, I brought this up with waiting to trade Jeremy Grant to the offseason. How many guys better than Jeremy Grant may end up on the trade block this offseason? This isn't me saying, like, Weaver made a mistake, but it's like, oh, yeah, Grant's going to be one of the hot names on the market. Well, there may be a few other names on the market this offseason as well. We've seen, Utah struggling a little bit in the playoffs, and there's some talk of them blowing it up. You talked about Julius Randle falling out of favor. And here's what's also interesting, Omari and Wes, is everybody says you don't draft for fit. We actually talked about this before we recorded, that we wouldn't have to worry about fit. But with the Pelicans skyrocketing up, with the Knicks skyrocketing up, we've had to consider fit. It hasn't ended up changing a lot, but I have a feeling you really considered not drafting Banchero right there. And I think that tells you that it's a top 3 in this draft, that you weren't willing to go to the next tier and draft somebody else.
It's definitely a top 3. Like, I thought about Shaedon Sharpe there, and I thought about Ivy there, but Sharpe is an unknown. We'll get into him when he comes off the board, but his draft range right now is probably anywhere between best case scenario 4, worst maybe 10. It just depends on how he tests, works out, combine and whatnot. And then Ivy, like, I just think he has a lot of warts. Like, I would go Ivy there, like, if I really just didn't like Banchero, but I just think there's a big enough gap between Banchero and Ivy that you just take Banchero and figure it out. Like, if you're the Knicks, you can't draft for fit. You just draft for talent.
Yeah, and Banchero's number 1 on my personal big board, and so I'm absolutely with you there that you take Banchero, you figure it out. You try to play him together for 20 games, and then when it doesn't work, you trade him, or you just trade Randall right away. That's what I would do if I was the GM of the Knicks. I'd take Banchero in a heartbeat, and then I would trade Julius Randle. But what does Wes say about that draft pick?
That one's really tough, like you guys have just been saying. I feel like just because of how awkward it is, it's got to be like a B. I can't just go 3 straight A's. But and I literally like Paolo, but it's just such a weird mesh with the team. So I'm going to go B.
Yeah, that's fair. There's no pick there. I think that makes total sense for New York. So you just go best player available, and maybe in 3 years, you trade Randall to Charlotte or something. I don't know. And it just looks better down the road instead of right now.
I can't wait to tweet this out and see what Knicks fans think, because it'll make its way into their Twitterverse, and I can't wait to see what they think about that. I have a feeling they'll love it, and they'll just be trade Randall. That moves us to pick number 4 in our Detroit Pistons. And this is the exact scenario I did not want to be in. So I'm going to be interested to see who you would select as well, Amari. But with the number 4 pick, the Detroit Pistons, with the top 3 off the board, swing for the fences and take Shaedon Sharpe.
I knew you were going to do that. Like, I just knew. Like, I think you were hoping they would fall to 4 just so you could stand on your Shaedon Sharpe soapbox. But let's hear it.
So I'll be honest, at this spot, I would love for the Pistons to trade out. Like, in all seriousness, Amari, I would love for the Pistons to trade out if they land at number 4. Here's where I'm having a hard time. I've taken some deep dives into the top 3, into Benedict Mathurin, Keegan Murray, your boy Keegan Murray. I like him a lot more after taking a deep dive into him. I just don't know that I'm ready to draft those guys at 4. And I know we've talked about on this pod that this is a pick the Pistons just can't miss. You just can't miss. And so I would understand if somebody just said, hey, take Keegan Murray here. He's going to be a longtime starter. Take Benedict Mathurin here. He's going to be a longtime starter with some upside. I know Shaedon Sharpe is scary. I get it. I understand. I'm trying not to just go out the workout videos. I'm trying to go off other things I've heard in the podcasts I listen to from, draft guys that do this. And I just think he's a perfect fit next to Cade if he can become what he's supposed to become. So I'm going to take the chance.
Yeah, if you're swinging for the fences, I think that makes a lot of sense. He's just an unknown, but Shaedon Sharpe is a guy where if he crushes his workouts, and obviously he's a tier 1 athlete, like if he shoots it well during his workouts, like it wouldn't shock me if he does end up moving up above Ivy, just because we know Ivy's flaws, and Sharpe, you can kind of project onto him the player you want him to be, or maybe can just like kind of shape and mold him into. So more of a long-term prospect, but he's 2 years younger than Ivy, and tier 1 athlete like Ivy, but maybe he's got a little bit more game to him. So I don't know if I would go Sharpe. I don't know who I would go with at number 4, honestly.
It's a tough spot, right? Like, yeah. And again, not to like continue to beat a dead horse, but this is really where the draft breaks. There's a real tier after number 3. Number 4 is a weird spot to be in. I said this the other day. What's really interesting if the Pistons land here is whether Troy Weaver takes Jaden Ivey or not, right? Because Troy Weaver's done it with Russell Westbrook. And if he doesn't take Jaden Ivey at number 4, I think that speaks to what Troy Weaver saw or didn't see from Jaden Ivey. And so I think this is where the draft really gets interesting. And this is why I want the Pistons to stay in the top 3. And I would strongly, strongly consider trading out of this depending on what other assets. Now, to Wes's point, he always brings you, but you got to find someone that's wanting to trade up and make this selection, though.
I think I would go Ivy just because I feel like I don't know enough about Shaedon Sharp to take that swing yet. Now, as we get into combine season a month from now and whatnot, reports start coming out, you're talking to people, getting a feel for how he is. I can see Sharp moving up. But right now, I just think Ivy, the main thing with him is just his shooting. Well, that's not the main thing. He's also not quite a point guard. He's more of an off guard. But I think if everything goes right for him, he's a Donovan Mitchell type guy, and you still got to swing on that upside. So I'd probably still go Ivy, but I'm not super married to that. I could go Sharp easily.
So I'll be completely honest. Sitting here right now, I would feel more comfortable trading back to 7, acquiring whatever may come with that, and drafting Benedict Mathurin or Keegan Murray. How would you feel about that?
I think I agree with that too. If you could trade back and get decent value, I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. If you could get Mathurin or you could get Murray, to me, that's a pretty good trade because once you get past that top 3, it's just, I don't love it. Even if like I think the Pistons are pretty high on Jalen Duren as well. Even if you think Duren's got like Bam upside or whatever, you could even go with him. So there's a lot of ways you could go, but I would totally trade back.
Yeah, I just think it's those two guys when you're at 4 and 5, those two guys are really the high upside, but the floor is really, really low and really, really scary, especially with Sharp. I get it because there's so much unknown. But if I was staying at 4, I would take him and I would just say, you know what? I'm going to go for it here. And I think a lot of the stuff with Sharp is information we're never going to be privy to, Amari. We don't know why he didn't play at Kentucky this year. We don't know his work ethic. We don't know all of this stuff that Troy Weaver and other GMs around the league are going to find out as much as they can. But we don't know that stuff, and we won't know that stuff.
Yeah, so good job selecting Sharp and giving us an extra 7 minutes of hypotheticals here. That was a more interesting pick than Ivy for sure. So I respect it.
Wes, I can't wait for this grade.
Well, for everything you guys just talked about, I think I have to give it let's go B minus. I'll throw a minus in there instead of throwing out a C plus because it could really work out, right? But it also could go really badly, and you've got a couple guys behind him that you could have picked that might have been more immediate, I guess, fits. But here's a question for you guys, if I could throw it out. If this is how weird the draft lottery falls, do you look at trading up?
If you could package a pick with Jeremy, per se.
I like that.
I
like that a lot.
Yeah, like let's say it's the 3rd pick and, a team's not super in love with Chet. Like let's say, Ben Carroll and Jabari go number 2. I like Chet enough to where I would package, 4 or 5 or whatever, and Jeremy and try to move up for sure. I think so.
Yeah, I'm with Amari. I love that idea, Wes, that you take Jeremy Grant and because this whole Blazers thing may have fallen through the cracks, which, well, I'm sure we'll talk about that. That pick's at number 8. That may be too rich for them. They may not want to trade number 8, their own first round and only first round pick for Jeremy Grant. The whole talk was the extra pick that they might acquire from the Pelicans, which is funny how then the Pelicans still ended up the number 2 with the Lakers pick. But I like that. I would do it. I would package Jeremy Grant because, again, that tier break is just so drastic. Number 5, Omari, you're back on the clock, and the Houston Rockets are up.
So this is another awkward one. I think you have to take Ivy here. I don't know how you justified passing on Ivy at number 5, but it's just awkward because they just drafted Jalen Green and they play the same position. You're not playing either of those guys at the 1 or the 3. Or maybe if you think Ivy can develop into a 1, you feel better about it. But they also have Kevin Porter Jr., who's, very good with the ball in his hands. So that's just a really kind of weird young backcourt. And Ivy, I don't know. He doesn't really fit in that mix at all. So I just got 2 really awkward teams in a row for where they're drafting at. But just as far as just taking the best available player, I don't know how you don't take Ivy here. So you just take Ivy. You hope he develops enough point guard skills to where maybe him and Jalen can play together. And if they can't, they can always make a deal down the road. So, I could see Houston moving down. And, if they did fall to 5 and Ivy's the guy there, just because those guys just don't fit. Like, they just don't fit. You shouldn't draft for fit, but when you have 2 guards who are not primary playmakers but also need the ball. And Jalen Green is a much better off-ball shooter than Ivy as well. I don't know. Like, that's just so janky. Like, it's super janky, but you take Ivy and it's probably going to get a C from Wes, or maybe it gets a higher grade because it is best fit. I don't know. I don't like either of my last two picks, even though they're the right picks. Like, it's just like it just feels gross.
Well, you know what happened is the teams that are supposed to be in the top three that can, absorb front court help fell out of the top three. So now we're trying to put guards with teams that don't need guards, and so it has become kind of weird. And I agree. Like, I don't know how you don't take Jaden Ivey. It's not like Benedict Mathurin fits any better in Houston if you wanted to take him. I mean, just kind of looking at our board, A.J. Griffin Jr. is an off-ball player. Keegan Murray, I guess, Jalen Duren, Johnny. Like, I don't know that there's not a whole lot of on-ball guys that you're going to draft at number 5 in this draft. We may not end up taking an on-ball guy at all in this lottery, unless you think Jaden Ivey is actually a point guard. So is that like, we've said this, and we've got some love for saying this on the pod that Jaden Ivey is not a point guard. And that's why if he did end up in Detroit, I don't think that's a bad play. Like, Jaden Ivey is in Detroit is a much better fit for Jaden Ivey than Jaden Ivey going to Houston. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. Like, of all the teams sort of in that, top 4 or 5, just as far as odds that our Tankathon spent today, Houston is like probably the worst fit for Ivey by far, just because they did just take Jalen Green. And if you're picking between the two guys, you probably pick on Green because he just averaged 17 a game and pretty good efficiency as a rookie. Really, really bad situation for Ivy, but yeah, I think you just draft him, and if you think he can develop those ball skills, it doesn't have to be Chris Paul. I mean, even if he becomes more of a Westbrook type, like maybe that could still work. Not that happy about it, but Ivy's the pick.
Wes?
I'm going to go B, only because I like Ivy, and if it does work and Ivy becomes that Westbrook type or Donovan Mitchell, that is an insanely athletic backcourt, and that would be a lot of fun, selfishly, to watch.
It would be. I mean, that would be the most athletic backcourt in the NBA, and I don't even know what number 2 would be. Desmond Bane is a decent athlete. Obviously, John's one of the best athletes, but that's just the athleticism you have there is really insane. And if Ivy could just be a B playmaker, he's collapsing the defense. You're taking the pressure off of Jalen Green. There is some upside there. It's just more so me not thinking that Ivy's going to be that type of player. So, but other people may see that pick and they're like, oh, this is perfect. So I can see both sides of it.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. It's one of those that could definitely hit, but if it doesn't, it could be really, really bad. We're going to get one more in here before the break, and that is the Orlando Magic at the number 6 spot. And this is me back on the clock. And I'm actually going to take your boy, Keegan Murray, to go to the Orlando Magic. And I think my biggest reason is, they have Jonathan Isaac there, and they have some other bigs.
Franz Wagner.
Yeah, but I just think there's a lot of players on that team. It's like there's a lot of upside. They're not really sure. Like, I just think a stabilizing force like Keegan Murray, like he's just going to be a solid player. He can be a starter. It allows you to do some other things with other guys if you needed to. So I just for the Magic, let's get a good player. We know he's going to be good because I feel like there's how good is Cole Anthony? How married are they to Cole Anthony? Jalen Suggs, we talked about how good this rookie class was, Omari. He didn't necessarily have the same type of year as these other guys. Franz did. Gary Harris is going to be gone, but Jonathan Isaac, Mo Bamba, not sure if he's still going to be there. So I just think a guy like that would fit in nice with what they have going. Just a guy is going to be good.
And you do feel like Franz, I'm assuming, is more of a small forward than a power forward, even though he's 6'10".
So that's where I have him playing in this lineup, I guess. So again, I didn't catch a ton of Magic games. I know he's listed on Spot Track, wherever we did all the roster breakdown. It had him listed as a small forward. I'd be interested to look on NBA.com and see where the majority of his minutes were listed. So this is good conversation too, because again, we do this because we can talk about all these prospects for Pistons fans because some of these guys could still end up in Detroit. Do you think Keegan plays some 3? I think those guys could interchange enough that it works, no matter who you label the 4. Kind of like if he was in Detroit with Sadiq Bey.
Yeah, I think it could work. I actually just checked cleaning the glass for Franz, and they had him playing mostly small forward as well. So he's a small forward. You have Murray a power forward. Both of those guys can shoot. And then Jonathan Isaac's probably your starting 5 in that scenario, assuming he's good to go next season. Maybe Mo Bamba comes off the bench, although he did have a pretty good year as well. So you have some overlapping pieces, but at the end of the day, they're a rebuild. I think just having a guy who could come in and he's going to be good, pretty high floor guy in Murray. Of course, I'm a fan of Murray anyway, so I would probably make that pick as well. It makes sense. They're at a stage where, maybe they've got some roster decisions to make as far as which guys are committed to and which guys aren't. And if Franz, for a fact he's going to be a guy that sticks around, I think Murray can put himself in that same tier. You got some backcourt stuff to figure out with Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs and whatnot. But, for Orlando, it's kind of like, who cares about fit? Just get talent to figure it out. And I think Murray's the right pick for sure.
Before we go to break, Wes, why don't you give us our grade on pick number 6 to the Magic?
That's a really tough one, too. And especially, too, because the Magic, not too long ago, I think they took Okiki, right? And they got Wendell Carter. So they got a little bit there at the 4 or 5, but I don't know who else they would have picked. So I got to go B.
All right, stay with us. When we come back from the break, we're going to finish off our mock draft with picks 7 through 14.
All right, hey, Carlos, just a quick idea. How about if I say, hey, this is Sean Windsor, and you say, hey, this is Carlos Morales, and I'll go, and then we'll go back. You want to try that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Hey, this is Sean Windsor.
And this is Carlos Benares.
And we are the team behind Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean, where we are going to talk about, you guessed it, sports, but lots of other stuff. Like what, Carlos?
Oh, we're going to talk about your favorite subject, Sean, food. Probably more food. Arts, culture, sports, TV, movies, you name it. If it's happened in Detroit, we're going to talk about it.
And sometimes we're going to have guests in who obviously know a lot more than we do about just about everything. But we're going to have some free press journalists to talk about big stories, folks from the sports world. We're going to be out every Thursday. You can find this podcast wherever you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We hope you'll join us.
All right, we are back with our live mock draft. We just hit the first half, and now we're going to go through the second half of it, pick 7 through 14. And I am up with the Indiana Pacers. So I feel like the draft is pretty much wide open at this point. With that 7th pick, I think I'm going to go with my guy Mathurin here.
Yes, I like it.
Yeah, I think he's just a classic off-ball guard. Can improve defensively, but he's a really good shot maker. He's a good athlete. I think he's got pretty decent vision for a shooting guard. He's also a good athlete. So, we've talked about it. He gets compared to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I think he'll probably end up being a little bit better than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And also, when you just look at that Indiana roster, they made a big trade, of course, for Tyrese Halliburton, who is very much a point guard. They have Buddy Hield at shooting guard. They have Chris Daugherty, who also had a pretty solid rookie season. But I think you could take Mathurin here and feel pretty good. I don't know if you're married to Hield long term. I don't know if Chris is your starting 2 moving forward, or if he's more of just like a really good role player who comes off the bench. So Mathurin just feels like a good pick here. He's a high floor guy. I feel pretty good about him being an NBA player. And he fits next to Halliburton pretty well because he went to ball in Halliburton's hands, and Mathurin doesn't need it. So I feel way better about this pick than I did about the Knicks and the Houston Rockets picks.
Now, I'm 100%. Whenever I saw it and I said Benedict Mathurin, no doubt. I think this is kind of the range for Mathurin at number 7. This, of course, is how far the Pistons could fall. And he's a guy that's definitely on my radar for the Pistons if they would happen to drop further than what they did here in our live mock, because he's a guy that fits because of everything you said about him playing off of Halliburton is why he would be perfect for Detroit playing off of Cade Cunningham. And again, this is one guy that I have done a deep dive into, Amari, and this kid defends. Now, off the ball, he's got a little bit of Hami vibes defensively, but on the ball, this kid gets after it. And I just think he's going to be a really good player. KCP is the floor. We've done this with Keegan Murray, with Jabari Smith Jr. The floor is Rashard Lewis. That's the floor. There's more of a ceiling. It's the same thing with Benedict Mathurin. The floor is KCP, and that man is a smooth athlete that could have a higher ceiling as well. So, Wes, I know I've sold you a little bit more on Ben Mathurin. What do you give this pick?
I'm actually going to give it an A, and I really like it for the Pacers too, just because I think Halliburton, Duarte, and Mathurin, all 3 could probably play together, and it's a very Indiana Pacers backcourt.
Yeah, I think so too. Mathurin might be able to play some small forward,
yeah,
and
I agree.
And you've got some some interchangeable pieces in there. All those guys can shoot, so that helps as well. It helps a lot when everybody in your backcourt can shoot. You don't have to make as many tough fit decisions there. So, all right, I have 2A so far. I believe I'm the head in the grades. Not that it's a competition, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay, so I wasn't even going to say this, but you should have seen, I know we're not on YouTube yet, but you should have seen the smile on Omari's face when he got that grade. Like, he's just living this up, and it's because they're both salty about my Batman take to start the episode. All right, the Blazers are up at number 8. And before we move on from this one, after I make my pick, I do want to talk about who we would take here if it was the Pistons pick because of the Jeremy Grant trade rumors and all that. But we'll get to that in a second. I'm actually going to take Jalen Duren here for the Portland Trail Blazers. And I just look at the roster. I don't know what you add in the backcourt. I don't know that anything makes sense there with Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons. I assume they're going to keep him around. They traded for Keon Johnson. I don't know if they're married to him, if it's a guy they want to keep. Maybe you could go with a small forward. I don't know who's there. I think Jalen Duren makes sense. Even if Nurkic comes back, I still like Jalen Duren to the Blazers right here at pick number 8.
I like that pick a lot. They definitely need size. Duren is the next best big man on the board by a pretty significant margin. I think he's another guy that could really make a case for himself during workouts, just given that he was in an unideal situation in Memphis just because of their roster construction for most of the season where they couldn't really take advantage of having a really bouncy, athletically gifted big man who can catch lobs, decent footwork. He's really young, too. I think he's still 18 years old. So I like Duren. I think this is just a pretty straightforward pick, definitely.
All right, Wes, I'm going to go ahead. You give me the grade on that, and then we'll talk some Pistons stuff here if they were ended up at this pick.
Yeah, I love that. Give Dame a bouncy big who can defend. That's an A.
Yes, let's go. Let's go. All right, Omari, let's play this scenario out first. Let's say this is how the lottery sits. The Pistons, with my selection, took Shaedon Sharpe at 4, and they get this number 8 pick from the Blazers. Who is Troy Weaver taking? Because I'm looking at what's left on our board, and I'm not sure where they would go.
For sure.
It may be Duren for them, too.
I honestly think Duren might be the pick here. I mean, we know that Troy Weaver loves centers, and I think fans are probably thinking, well, what about Isaiah Stewart? But if Isaiah Stewart's launching threes like he did at the end of this past season, and I do think that that's going to be a core part of his game sooner rather than later, you can play Duren and Isaiah Stewart together. I mean, Stewart is a pretty good perimeter defender on switches. Duren probably has more upside as a rim protector than Isaiah, even though Isaiah was still a pretty good rim protector as well. And I think just as far as just the best player on the board, but also just taking a guy that fits with what you're trying to do. And the Pistons, to an extent, I think should be valuing upside here. At that point, I just don't know if I like anyone else enough to pass on Duren. Like, I do like Johnny Davis. I don't like Johnny Davis enough to take him there just because he's not a great shooter. I think he's going to be a bucket in the NBA, but, is he going to be closer to a guy like Austin Rivers, where he's just a change of pace guy off of the bench, or is he actually going to be a bona fide above average starter? So I would go Duren here for sure. I think if the Pistons had that pick and they're at number 8.
What complicates it is I took Shaedon Sharpe, so now are you going to double down with another guard and take Johnny Davis or AJ Griffin out of Duke? And I just don't think you do. And so I think those guys are more on the board if the Pistons had landed one of the top 3 guys or even Keegan Murray. Let's say at 5 or 6, they take Keegan Murray, then maybe you take a guard here. So I want to ask, Wes is not going to like this question, so I'm glad he already gave me my grade. If you take Jalen Duren, do you end up letting Marvin Bagley III walk in free agency?
Might have to, wouldn't you? I mean, with how the Caps playing out, and he fills the bouncy big next to Cade and Killian. I mean, you might have to, depending on what they want to do in free agency.
Omari, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would keep Marvin. I think if you could get him on a good contract, especially, it's just better to have him than to not have him. The Pistons should be keeping as many young assets and good deals as they can. You could always make moves down the road. You don't even know if Duren is going to come in and be ready to go immediately. So it may just be more of a situation where, a year one, he doesn't play a whole lot. And a year 2, as he gets acclimated, he could step into more of a featured role. So I would keep Bagley personally, but long term, maybe you're not married to both of those guys.
Yeah, definitely keeps your options open. All right, we got 6 picks left, so we're going to speed this up just a little bit through the end of the lottery. Omari, you're up with so I don't mean to laugh, but the Sacramento Kings at number 9. Good luck.
Yeah, so this is an interesting team. I mean, you have De'Aaron Fox. They made that ill-advised trade, to me for Sabonis. And you've got Davion Mitchell, who had a really solid rookie season. Harrison Barnes. So, you've got some decent guys. They're sort of a weird team caught between wanting to compete but not being good enough to do so. At this point, and I'm not super huge on this prospect, but at the same time, if you're just looking for somebody who could eventually become an above-average NBA player, maybe you still swing for the fence a little bit. So I am going to go with, and I know we're trying to hurry up. I'm just thinking and making sure that this is the pick I'm going to make.
These are big decisions as a GM, yeah. Omar. This is your job. This is your paycheck. You take a little bit of time here.
Yeah, this is tough. I think I'm just going to go with AJ Griffin. I think 9 is probably the lower end of where he'll end up. But, I mean, he's 6'6", good athlete. He did shoot the ball pretty well. Maybe if everything shakes out right for him, he does become like a Harrison Barnes type. Like maybe that's his ceiling. Yeah, I just think he makes sense. I don't know if there is. It's hard to make a pick for Sacramento because it's like they want to compete, but at the same time, they probably shouldn't be trying to do that. But this late in the lottery, I don't know who you're going to pick who's going to come in and immediately be an impactful player anyway. So AJ Griffin's probably the pick here. I don't know if I would give that pick a great grade. So I know Bryce thinks we're in a conspiracy, Wes, but you don't have to.
Oh, I don't think. I know. But I actually like that pick. I mean, we talked about it actually a little before we came on that at the shooting guard spot, they have some questions, some unrestricted free agents. Dante DiVincenzo is a restricted free agent. So he may be able to come in there. Maybe you don't start him right away. But if nothing else, he's going to provide floor spacing and be able to shoot the ball. So I actually like that pick. I think it makes sense. Wes, what says you?
I'm giving it a C just because I don't like Adrian Griffin Jr. all that much, honestly.
Oh, I love it. Fair enough. All right, number 10, I am up with the San Antonio Spurs. I'm going to be a little bit like Omari here. I really want to go Johnny Davis, but I just don't feel like he fits within the roster. They have Murray, they have Josh Richardson, Lonnie Walker's restricted free agent. They drafted Primo last year. I'm going to go Jeremy Sohan. I think there's room on the roster for it. Get him in there, get good coaching. He's one of these guys, if you're not familiar, our listeners, athletic wing. There's some offensive limitations and question marks, but he's a defender. And I just think, you get into San Antonio, and I think they bring him along at the right pace. And I think that would be a good spot for him. So I'm going to go Jeremy Sohan.
I like that pick. I think guys like Sohan are really tough to evaluate because everybody's like, oh, they could be Draymond. And it's like, yeah, but they could also be Evan Turner, and, maybe for gambling for upside, that makes a lot of sense. If you like Sohan, I think that's a great pick. If you're kind of man Sohan like me, where it's I think you just have to draft him and just accept that he's probably not going to be Draymond. You don't like it as much. My pick here actually would have been Ty Washington.
Okay.
Just because he's a Kentucky guard. First half of the season was great. Then he got hurt, obviously, and he kind of fell off after the injury. But for me, he checks all the boxes of a guy that gets drafted lower than he should have been drafted because the factors outside of his control. Then he gets to the NBA, and everybody's like, how is he so good? And it's because this is the player he was till he got hurt. He got better from his injury, and Kentucky guards almost always exceed their draft position. And if there's one roster spot the Wizards really need help at, it is point guard. So I'll probably go Ty. But Sohan, I think that's a pretty fair pick, I guess, to me. It just boils down to if you think he'll be able to shoot or not.
I took Sohan for the Spurs, so you're going to take Ty for the Wizards.
Oh, it was the Spurs. Okay, okay. We're I'm trying to keep track of everything. I do have the Wizards next, so that is for the Spurs. Okay. All right, that was a live blunder. So for the Spurs, yeah, you know what? I'm looking at our notes. Yeah, okay, so they have Murray, obviously. They have Lonnie Marker. They have some pretty good backcourt guys. They actually do have a pretty big hole at power forward, so a guy like Sohan could come in and immediately seize a role. Okay, I actually like this a little bit better because now you're looking at the Spurs and how they develop players long-term, and you get a really toolsy guy like Sohan, and it just seems like the perfect Spurs guy where maybe he becomes like a Boris Diaw or I don't think he's going to become Kawhi, but they take guys who are good athletes, could do a lot of high IQ guys and develop them into something more. Okay, all right. I'm actually going to pivot. I like to speak a lot more. Yeah, I would give this a good. Yeah. I would go with Sohan here.
Omari tried to get his card to the commish before me with his. He was so excited about Ty. So to just recap a little bit right there, I took Jeremy Sohan to the Spurs at number 10. Omari, we're going to go Ty Washington to the Wizards.
We are going to go Ty for the Wizards. I already gave my picks. We could get back-to-back grades from Wes here.
There you go.
So I'm not super high on Sohan, but I think if there was anyone that was going to make it work with him, it's going to be Pop. So I'm going to give that one a B. And I do like Ty's fit with the Wizards. So I'll go back-to-back Bs. Not anything crazy, but both really solid picks.
All right, we're gonna run through these last three pretty fast. Oklahoma City is on the clock for the second time in the lottery. You took Jabari Smith Jr. for them with pick number 1. I am going to go with Nikola Jovic, just because I feel like he is your absolute Oklahoma City Thunder type selection. I know he's a bigger guy, but I think he plays more on ball. So, even though he's 6'10", just like Jabari Smith Jr., they're not the same type of players at all. I know they got Josh Giddey as a big guard. I just think they just continue to acquire all these types of players. I think they're just going to take the guys that they like, and then they're going to figure it out. Maybe they package them, whatever. Maybe you can run the second unit with Giddey playing the first unit with SGA. I don't know. I'm going to go Nikola Jovic right here.
That feels like a very OKC pick for sure. That is a very OKC pick.
That's what I thought. Wes, real quick, your grade on that one?
Yeah, it feels very OKC. It's another Poku swing, so I really like it.
All right, Omari, this is your last one. This is pick number 13. You have the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, so I'm going to go Mark Williams here.
Yep.
The Hornets, they seem like they're a team that they always need a center. I think Mark Williams is going to be a very good NBA center. I mean, he's got a massive wingspan. He's a really great athlete. Just prototypical DeAndre Jordan type mode where he's going to protect the rim, finish lobs, be a defensive pest. But maybe more upside than DeAndre, although we've watched DeAndre just not be very good for a while, so maybe I'm forgetting how good he was back in 2013 and 14. But anyways, it seems like the Hornets are always in need of a center. They have Mason Plumlee, but of course, probably not their long-term option there. I think this is a pretty easy Mark Williams pick here for me.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at mock draft, this is always where Mark Williams goes, is to the Hornets, wherever they're at the end of the lottery. Wes, your grade on that one?
Yeah, unless the Hornets move up, I don't think the lottery could work out any better for them if they're getting Mark Williams. So that's an.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great pick. I really like Mark Williams. He obviously really bumped his stock in the NCAA tournament. I'm on the clock at number 14 with the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but we did just both get back-to-back A's from Wes. So there we go.
Let's go. I thought this is where we'd struggle, is at the back end of the lottery is where we kind of come up with some bad ones. I'm going to go Johnny Davis. I think Johnny Davis is probably going to get drafted in the lottery. We haven't got to him yet. I think this is actually a good spot for him, especially if Colin Sexton doesn't stay in Cleveland. And so he's just a good player. You talked about him earlier, so I won't talk about him a whole lot more. Defender, good rebounder. I think if you're getting him at number 14 as the Cavs and you can know that you can just bring him off the bench and spot start him, I think you're feeling pretty good about that. So I think the Cavs, a team who probably think that they're trying to ascend, I think this is probably a pretty good spot for him, and they would be happy with that.
Yeah, I love that pick for sure. I mean, I like Johnny Davis. I think he's an NBA player. I'm not sure where his ceiling is, but Cleveland, I mean, they just need a guy who's going to take some scoring pressure off of Garland. And Garland being a great passer, great shooter. Davis is a little bit bigger and stronger than him, and I think they complement pretty well. I'll probably make the same pick here too.
Wes, what you got for us? Your last grade.
Yeah, I was kind of struggling with it. I think because I'm not very high on Davis, but like you said, it's a pretty good fit with the Cavs, and they got a hole on their bench there at the guard forward spot. So I think that's just solid. I'll just give it a B.
Fair enough. All right, I'm going to run through this real quick, Omari, before we close. You can give your final thoughts. Some guys that were left on the board: Dyson Daniels, Ochai Agbaji, Malachi Branham, who's flying up draft boards, Tari Eason, Jaden Hardy, Ousmane Dieng, Patrick Baldwin Jr., Blake Wesley. And then just a real quick recap. Oklahoma City got pick 1, selected Jabari Smith Jr. Pelicans at number 2, selected Chet. The Knicks ended up at number 3 and went with Paolo Banchero. And then I selected Shaedon Sharpe for the Pistons at number 4. Any overwhelming thoughts or takeaways as you look at our lottery draft here? I think we put a pretty good one together, Omari.
Yeah, I think we did too. There's no picks I really fundamentally disagree with. My main takeaway is that there's a top three, and then there's sort of a middle tier with Ivy and Sharp. And maybe you could put Mathurin and Murray sort of in that as well. And then after that, it's pretty wide open. And I think a lot of it just will come down, to fit and how much teams like individual guys. So maybe similar to last year to be a draft where the top half is somewhat predictable, and the deeper you get in, the more big swings you see. So this really is a draft where every team's going to have very, very different looking draft boards, and a lot of what ends up happening on draft night will just depend on what team needs what. There are guys that can go as high as 6 or, may fall out of the lottery completely. But overall, I think we did a pretty good job. So I'm going to give us both a pretty firm pat in the back for our GM work here.
I agree. I think we did a fine job. Wes, man, it was great to finally get your voice on the podcast. Even though there's some unbiased, you're like an NBA official trying to help Omari out, make sure the right guy win. No, I don't believe in that stuff at all. Thank you, Wes. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening. That was a lot of fun. Omari, why don't you take us away, my friend?
Yes, sir. Big thanks to everyone who helps us with the pod. Of course, our editor, Carrie Gier II, our executive producer, Anjanette Delgado, and our executive producer, Kirkland Crawford. Also, shout out to Wes, who puts our outlines together, keeps us in line, and finally made his podcast debut with this week's episode. So we'll definitely find more opportunities to get Wes on here. Thanks for following along. Plenty of draft content to come over the next couple of months, and we'll talk to you all soon.